If your team was 2 tanks, 3 DPS, but only 1 support, having one of those DPS swap to Ultron feels like almost nothing will change, right? This is why Marvel Rivals' character select screen is stylish, functional, but a bit flawed. Its design implies hard cutoffs between roles, but some heroes operate in a gray area between those 2 roles, and it's these heroes I want to discuss with you today. Picking these hybrid heroes can help alleviate teammates struggling on different roles and help you win more games. My goal is to talk about the 3 types of hybrid heroes in Marvel Rivals, and then talk about which heroes fall into these descriptions. Let's start with the broad categories, and then we'll go on a hero per hero basis. Starting off with the true classification. This classification is here to denote the exact opposite of this video's goal, but needs to be included to fully understand the picture. These are heroes that are so true to their role, just like the name implies, that they can operate as sort of a one-man army. These are the heroes you take when no one else is selecting from a role, or if your team wants to go triple on a certain role, and you need to basically pick up the slack. We won't be talking about every single hero in this video, of course, but we will be pointing out instances where a hero is so capable of doing their job that they can do it basically all by themselves. These are also strong as a fallback option if your role isn't loud enough, if that makes sense, even with another person on the role with you. For example, if your team's tanking isn't good enough, or if you don't have enough DPS, or your heals just simply aren't cutting it, these are the types of heroes to pick. The next classification is the partial classification. This classification of hybrid heroes denotes that a hero possesses some tools to perform a role other than what they have listed, but it's not enough to justify their pick instead of actually just swapping to a different role if you're struggling. In other words, these are heroes that are purely meant to pick up some of the slack left behind in another role, but if that role's already struggling, it's not going to cut it. Almost every hero is in some case, in some way, a partial, so I'll be pretty picky about how I choose these. But feel free to let me know your disagreements or additions in the comments. Sometimes these are also warranted by team-ups, and I'm generally going to avoid those outside of maybe an honorable mention. Lastly is the multi-classes. Multi-class are the true hybrid of their role. These are heroes that ride the line of being classified completely differently, even by the devs. If these heroes were to receive even a small change or two, they likely would change over to being a partial in the role that they are multi-classing in. These are the go-to heroes for picking up your team's slack, and often these heroes are chosen to preemptively cover a weakness when selecting a triple of a single role comp, but also you need to be careful when selecting these, as it can leave holes in your team comp because you aren't covering that role completely. For example, you don't want a solo multi-class tank. The way to make up for this is to have another role with a multi-class, so that you're basically picking up each other's checks, as it were. All right, let's move on to the list on a hero per hero basis. This will be in alphabetical order, so feel free to skip around. Also, feel free to subscribe if you've made it this far. It helps us out and it allows us to keep doing this stuff. All right, starting off with Adam Warlock as a partial DPS. We're starting off with a potentially controversial one. I feel as though many players view Adam as a multi-class DPS, but I think his lack of mobility and lack of damage enabling ults places him right at the cusp of that classification instead. I think the evidence of this is his spotty representation in triple support. Instead, oftentimes he's played alongside a true support in like a 2-2-2, but feel free to yell at me in the comments if you disagree. Next, Angela is a multi-class DPS, high mobility, lethal combos, and a smaller health pool. I still believe Angela was meant to be a DPS, but was changed mid-development cycle to make the players happy because we haven't had a tank in a while. Angela tries to enable a triple tank comp by replacing one of your DPS with a one-wing scoliosis wielding Valkyrie. Blade is a partial tank. While Blade's damage is good, he's uniquely borrowing tools and tactics from the tanks to see his success. His 80% block damage reduction is nothing to sneeze at, and it allows him to survive some otherwise lethal engagements while still being pumped full of heals, so long as he doesn't have his vampire mode out. His dashes and ult are just as good at crowd control as they are for damage as well. This next one is going to be a bit odd or weird, so stay with me, okay? Captain America, partial support. So, name another tank that can generate as many shields in as short of time span as Captain America. for as long even. Yes, he will play the health pack hungry support puncher for 90% of the game, but his ult is only mimicked by other supports. If your supports can't seem to stay on top of their defensive counter options, he can be a great pick. Next, Cloak and Dagger as a true support, capable of solo heals and often the source of solo heals in lower ranks. It's tempting to place them in a partial DPS category because of Cloak, but if you're playing Cloak even close to as much as you're playing Dagger, your team's gonna be upset with you, I promise. Next is the new kid on the block, Daredevil, who is a multi-class tank, at least I think. This is a bit of a bold move on a hero that is so new, but I do think it's warranted. His vision allows him to see information on the battlefield that any tank would kill for. He has Captain America shield on cooldown, he has an inflated health pool that can be pumped up even more with abilities, and his ult is low damage but focuses heavily on crowd control. So I think that warrants him being a bit preemptively or maybe a bit early placed into the multi-class tank. So as an aside, Strange, Emma, and Groot, I could see arguments for being partials, but I think they're just not quite enough. Particularly Groot. Like, I know he's currently the only tank that can heal like other players right now, but it requires a team up, which just doesn't quite feel right, because that requires two heroes to get one thing done. It just feels like we're splitting hairs, but you know, let me know in the comments. All right, next up, Hela, true DPS. Need I say more? All right, Invisible Woman, partial tank. She has a shield, a knockback, and slow. Sue plays babysitter to her other supports and even to her DPS, and the only thing she lacks is a larger health pool, which could be a cool direction for NetEase to go with in exchange for some of her healing if they ever do decide to move away from the anti-Sea Bear Circle focus of supports for their ults. Shout out to Iron Fist as being a partial tank, and again with a team up of partial supports. Again, I don't like including some of this stuff in here, but I'm just throwing him a bone on the side, just kind of throwing it out there. You guys can let me know in the comments what you think about that. All right, Iron Man, a true DPS, mostly because of his ult. Iron Man's damage is more than fine, but his ult can do the work of two other DPSs if the player using him is skilled. And at our halfway mark, Jeffrey Land Sharkington as a partial DPS. Jeff's ult is a DPS ult that happens to heal you and your team, and you cannot convince me otherwise. His mobility and tools explicitly dedicated to damage make all the arguments that I would need to make for me. Flank Jeff is dead. Long live DPS Jeff. Luna, a true support, the healer of healer in Marvel Rivals. Her ult is hated because of how good it is at doing its job. Luna often swaps Cloak and Dagger at higher tiers when solo support is needed or when DPS refuses to swap, or if the heals just simply aren't good enough. I hope there isn't any argument here. Magneto, true tank, a shield that has time instead of a health bar for its resource, a bubble that he can give to allies, and an ult that shuts down practically everything. Fear Magneto. Mantis, partial DPS. Absolutely can see an argument here for a multi-class with her, but her heals have gotten better and her ult is still a circle of nope. Unlike Adam, she has a bit of extra movement too, albeit via just a speed boost. Mr. Fantastic, a multi-class tank. We all saw this one coming. Buff his HP by 100 and lowers damage by 10, and no one can tell him apart from the other tanks. I feel as though Mr. F is a little underappreciated and just requires someone to know when to pick him to see success, much like Penny. Go see our DPS categorization video for more information about that. Moon Knight, true DPS. It's taken like 4 seasons, but Moon Knight can finally stand on his own 2 feet as a DPS worthy of being truly, truly feared. Hopefully there isn't much debate here. Moon Knight, alongside a more DPS-focused tank, can handle damage output without much issue. Penny, multi-class DPS. While we don't think of Penny as being a major damage dealer in most ranks, if you are solo tanking with Penny, you're gonna feel it in your KD. She can be strong in the right circumstances, but you cannot rely on her to protect your team by herself, or even sometimes alongside another tank if that tank also has a sort of higher hybrid status. Storm, partial support. She supplies buffs to her nearby allies, something that no other DPS can do like she does. I would love to see her get a team up with like maybe Mantis to have her speed boost her wind mode, also supply some form of healing to really seal the deal here, because currently DPS have the most partial and multi-class tanks, but arguably like 1 or 2 with Iron Fist if you count them for the supports. It'd be nice to see a more kind of lean that direction. Punisher, true DPS. Good Punishers are partial tanks great Punishers are true DPS. He lacks finesse or pizzazz, but he gets the job done. If you need a stream of damage on anything that is generally in front of you, alongside an ult that could kill a building, then the Punisher is your man. Thor, multi-class DPS, movement, range, and a damage-focused ult, and a team-up that helps him to dive. I don't think there's any doubt that Thor is as much of a DPS as he is a tank. Thankfully, he doesn't spend too much of his tank title to snag the DPS multiclass, unlike Penny. Ultron, multiclass DPS. While it's neat to have a multiclass in an otherwise strictly classified role, it's a shame that Ultron is multiclassed into DPS, the most represented role. He, like Jeff, has an ult that feels like a DPS ult that just happens to heal, and his flight removes any question about his mobility. I would not be upset if they moved Ultron into the DPS role when they added their next supports, but I doubt they'll ever do that. To round our list off, Wolverine as a partial tank. Wolv may be built for tank busting, but with a damage resist and an artificially inflated health pool that has a playstyle built around forced crowd control, he occupies arguably even more in the tank category than I'm giving him credit for here. Hey, if this helped you out, remember to subscribe and leave the video a like. Bless your faces, and deuces.